Hello, Jets fans, and welcome to another episode of Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. Make sure to also check out some of our newest videos, including my thoughts on the Utah Mammoths logos and uniforms. But again, if you're a Jets fan, we're trying to get more Jets fans into the channel. Make sure to like, subscribe so that the YouTube algorithm can help get us more Jets fans to the program. And of course, we are past the draft, but that doesn't mean there's a little bit of drama in Jets land. So yesterday, the Pittsburgh Steelers traded George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys, which of course set off massive speculation that the Steelers would eventually be trading for the Jets' Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard responded on Twitter with the gif from the Wolf of Wall Street, basically, "I'm not effing leaving." So there is a lot to digest from this. There's the Steelers' point of view, there's the Jets' point of view, and there's the Allen Lazard's point of view. And I think that each one has a very different view on the situation. I'll start with Allen Lazard. I'll look at the Steelers, and then I will wrap it up with the Jets. So let's start with Allen Lazard. Why is Allen Lazard adamant about remaining here with the New York Jets? And I think it is pretty obvious. This is Allen Lazard's best chance to get production. Don't forget the Jets have redone Allen Lazard's contract. He's a free agent at the end of this year. He'll be 31 next offseason. This is really probably his last chance to get that bite of the apple for a decent NFL contract. Now, again, the Jets gave him a $44 million contract a couple of years ago while he was in his 20s. You're probably not going to see that, but maybe he could get a good one-year deal, maybe a 2 or 3 year deal, but get at least over $10 million. He's probably looking at the situation and going, if he goes to Pittsburgh or if the Steelers do trade for him, he will at the best be third on that depth chart. When he looks at the Jets depth chart, he's likely the number 2 receiver just based off of experience and track record in the NFL, what he brings to the table, his size, his blocking ability. And despite the Jets not going to have a pass-happy offense, despite the Jets not going to be a throw-it-all-over-the-yard type of team, I think Lazard's smart enough to realize it's a lot better to be the number 2 receiver on this team with Garrett Wilson taking pressure off of him than being the number 3, maybe even the number 4 receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. So Lazard probably views this as a chance to get the most production, get the most bang for his buck, and be able to hit that free agency market at the age of 31 and hopefully get the last big contract of his career. Now let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers side. The Steelers, I feel, are operating that Aaron Rodgers is coming. The way they attacked the draft, even though they drafted Will Howard, the way they have addressed this offseason, it seems they're operating under the notion that Aaron Rodgers is coming, that Aaron Rodgers will make a decision shortly or at some point, but he will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And because of that, they've done moves that were a bit of a head scratcher. I mean, the George Pickens move, again, they're trading young receiver out of there to help open up space. I think that Pickens to Dallas is a good value because now they add a good number 2 receiver with CeeDee Lamb. But we also look at this, and they traded a receiver who I thought was very talented, but they are clearly looked like they are operating that Aaron Rodgers is going to walk through the door and be the starting quarterback, which leads me to the next option, which is the Jets. Where do the Jets fit in all of this? I think that the Jets view Allen Lazard more as a trade asset than an asset to their team. Because when they redid this contract, they made it a very easy cap number to A, cut outright, but B, to trade. And when I look at the Jets, I think that their hope in a perfect world is that the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers and that Aaron Rodgers does what Aaron Rodgers does. He's going to want someone that knows his system, that understands the system, and since Devontae Adams is not available, Allen Lazard becomes the best option. Now, the Steelers would probably hope that Allen Lazard would get cut by the Jets, but I think the Jets are going to look at it and say, we want to get an asset back. And you ask, well, what can the Steelers offer? The obvious answer is draft picks, and again, it likely will be a late day 3 pick, but don't forget, it's a quarterback-rich draft in 2026. As many assets as you can are going to help. But there's also an intriguing asset on the Steelers that I think could make sense for the Jets. Maybe package him with a 7th-round pick, and that's Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson, again, is going to be a second-year receiver. last year battled through injuries, didn't get on the field for the Steelers. But again, this was a highly rated wide receiver coming out of Michigan in the previous draft. He's going to his second year. And why it makes sense for the Jets is look at what the Jets are betting on. They're betting on guys long-term with upside. And when you look at Roman Wilson and you look at Aaron Rodgers' propensity not to target young receivers, to exclude young receivers, I don't think it's going to really work with Roman Wilson there. And he would probably say, look, I prefer Allen Lazard. Now, again, Roman Wilson is a 5'10 receiver, but on the small side, doesn't really bring that big body that the Jets probably want on the outside. But this is a guy that's still under 25, is on a reasonable contract, can run incredible routes, and I do think can really push guys in case Malachi Corley or Arian Smith aren't ready, or give them friendly competition in that wide receiver room. For me, that could be a very good trade for the Jets. And I do think the Jets are holding on to Lazard in the hope that they're going to get an asset, basically, because Aaron Rodgers is going to want him wherever he goes. So when I look at Lazard's side, he wants to stay with the Jets because he thinks it's his best way to get paid next offseason. When I look at the Steelers, I think that they'd be open to Lazard, but again, they are operating like that they are getting Aaron Rodgers, which I think is their mindset that Aaron Rodgers will be on the Pittsburgh Steelers next season. And when I look at the Jets, I think the Jets view him as just an asset right now. If they really wanted to keep him, they wouldn't have made a contract where not only was he easier to trade and cut this year, but that he's going to be outright gone from the team after one season. The big thing this team wanted was control. They wanted control of players long-term, and they basically are allowing Allen Lazard to get out of his contract a year early. So when I look at what the Jets are doing, I do think that Allen Lazard, at worst, is going to be a piece on this team to start the season. But that's the other thing we have to keep in mind. Allen Lazard might be on the Jets opening day roster. But if I was a betting man, I'm betting that he ends his season in black and yellow in Pittsburgh. He might be the Jets' week 1 wide receiver too, but who knows? Maybe the Steelers at first don't want to trade for Allen Lazard. But then by week 5, week 6, when Aaron Rodgers is saying, I need a guy in here that knows my system, I need a guy in here that I can trust, I need a guy that I have rapport with, then all of a sudden, Allen Lazard looks like a pretty nice carrot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at that point, maybe the Jets can get a little bit more. Maybe the Jets have seen now film of Roman Wilson, have seen him in his recovery, have seen him go through the preseason, and it becomes an intriguing option and becomes a more tradable commodity at that time. Look, I know Allen Lazard is a polarizing figure among New York Jets fans because you look at the production, it doesn't match the contract that they gave him. And yes, there are flashes. And if you were to look on the outside and you were to look at his stats last year from a outside Jet fan's perspective, they would say, he didn't have a bad season. But when you look at the amount of passing the Jets did, when you look at how many times Allen Lazard was forced the football by Aaron Rodgers, you understand it. Allen Lazard, again, is still likely this team's second best receiver going into the season. Now, there are so many different paths we can go on, whether he remains a New York Jet, whether he starts the season as a Jet and then gets traded midway through the season, or if he gets traded outright during this offseason. But the way I look at this is this 3-team basically package. The Jets view him as a movable asset. I think the Steelers would prefer not to trade for Lazard, but if Aaron Rodgers twists their arm, they will. And then I also look at Aaron Rodgers and I look at him and saying, okay, he wants to bring in guys that work in his system. But more importantly, I think Allen Lazard in a weird way doesn't want to go to Pittsburgh, even if Aaron Rodgers is there, because you look at that depth chart, he's probably going to be the third receiver on that depth chart. And I understand that it's working with Justin Fields, it's working with a new quarterback, but in his mind, he feels he's probably going to get the better production numbers here at the Jets, being their number 2, being the number 2 after Garrett Wilson with a rookie tight end, that he's going to be getting more targets, potentially more receptions, and to make Jets fan chagrin, more drops. But that when he goes to the free agency for a final time at the age of 31, which is the point where basically that's your last gasp for a decent wide receiver contract, that he's going to have the background of a productive season behind him. And it also might be a better feather in his cap, too, if he can prove he can be productive without Aaron Rodgers, because we saw it when he left Green Bay, when he came to the Jets. His first year, it didn't go well. Last year, was decent, but again, you had Aaron Rodgers throwing the football. Can he prove that to prospective teams? Hey, you know what? I can work without Aaron Rodgers. I worked well with Justin Fields. I became a go-to guy for Justin Fields. I became a productive number 2 for Justin Fields and elevated his performance. And I can bring that to the table when I am coming into your locker room for the 2026 season. So this is a fascinating thing. I think it's going to follow the Jets this whole offseason, and I think it could follow the Jets into the regular season. Even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to Pittsburgh. If Aaron Rodgers is in play at some point where basically he is not retired and that he is teasing the idea he is going to play football, whether it be in Pittsburgh, whether it be in Minnesota, whether it be an unnamed team we're not talking about, Allen Lazard will be tied to it. Because Aaron Rodgers, we know this. He'll say it that he doesn't need his, quote, guys. But when he came to the Jets, who followed him? It was Randall Cobb. It was Allen Lazard, and eventually it was Davante Adams. Well, Randall Cobb's out of the league. Davante Adams is in L.A., so now you look at it, Allen Lazard's really the last remaining soldier that Aaron Rodgers, I think, really trusts. And to a point where you get concerned. And if I was a team bringing him, I would be concerned with Allen Lazard because he's a guy that's going to frustrate you. If you're a Steeler fan and you're watching this and you're trying to gauge, well, what would Allen Lazard bring to the table? I'll tell you this, Allen Lazard will bring frustration to the table because he will make a great catch or two that will make your jaw drop. But then you'll see on a convertible third down or a key touchdown when you need a play, he will have a devastating drop. And it's funny, like when you're not expecting a lot from Lazard, he surprises you. But when you want him to be reliable, when you want him to be the guy that you can rely on in a key situations, well, at least for the Jets, he wasn't that. I still think that Lazard can still be a valuable piece for the Jets. I think he allows you to have the time for Arian Smith and guys like Malachi Corley to potentially develop behind him. But I would not be surprised if he's a member of the Steelers if Aaron Rodgers goes there. And like I said earlier in this episode, what would you get from the Steelers? Obviously, I would try to get a pick. It would be a day 3 pick. It would be a late pick. But if I was the Jets, one thing I would look at, if the Steelers are willing, I would look to try to get a 7th-round pick with Roman Wilson. Because Roman Wilson, again, adds another young body in that wide receiving room, adds a guy that can run routes, again, a bit on the smaller side, which I know the Jets are trying to get more size in that room. But you bring another guy to compete with Malachi Corley, another guy to compete with Arian Smith, a guy that's 23, a guy that's under team control for another 2 years after this season. That would make a lot of sense. And look, he's not going to get, I think, a lot of chance in Pittsburgh, especially if Aaron Rodgers is there. And for Arian Smith, it might be an exciting opportunity because there's a chance if he gets traded to the Jets, there might be a world where he could be this team's number 2 receiver by the end of the 2025 season. I mean, this is a kid that had a high 3rd-round grade on him, unfortunately battled through injuries. And again, you'd have to make sure your medical staff clears it. But if he's healthy and just had a bad breaks last year in his first season, then I would take the risk. I'd take a shot on him because, again, he's a cheap player with a lot of upside. And look, if it doesn't work out, you trade basically a player you were going to get rid of anyways to take a lottery ticket on a young receiver. If it pans out, great. If it doesn't, it's not going to kill you long term. So that's a guy I would target if I'm the Jets specifically, if there's a player that they're looking to move for Allen Lazard. But the big thing I also looked at too was why is Allen Lazard so defensive about staying with the Jets? Well, number one, I think he wants to still sell to this fan base that he cares that he wants to be here. But I also think that realistically, his agent, his team probably looks at situations and yeah, it'd be great to play another year with Aaron Rodgers. But is it also great to be buried on that depth chart to then have that stigma that you only work with Aaron Rodgers? Where if you stay with the Jets, and again, it's a risk, but if you have a productive receiving year and you have the production of a number 2 receiver and you hit the market as a 31-year-old, you might be able to convince another team to give you another contract. Maybe not a massive contract. Maybe it's a 1-year contract, but maybe it's a $12 million 1-year contract as opposed to getting basically a reserve option as well. Again, guys, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Allen Lazard. Make sure to comment on the video. If you're joining us after the live stream, you can always comment. I will get back to you as well. if you want to make sure your comment is read and you want to jump to the front of the line, or you just want to make a donation to the channel to help us grow with more content, make sure to use that super chat feature to jump to the front of the line. And look, I do think that the Jets did the smart thing with the restructuring of Lazard's contract. Again, they can basically get out of it with a minimum hit this year, and he becomes a free agent after the 2025 season. He took an $8.5 million pay cut. Basically, his $1.75 million salary is guaranteed for the year. So his cap number for 2025 is going to be $4.6 million, only $1.75 guaranteed. And when you really look at the wide receiver number, that's technically 1.6% of the entire Jets cap. Again, a very movable number. And when you look at the Steelers, who are up against the cap, they're trying to pay Watt and give Watt an extension. That's another reason why this could be an intriguing option. But there's two sides to every story. I mean, there's a world where Allen Lazard goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, has a good season, but comes out at the age of 31, hits the 2026 free agent market. And teams go, well, we like you, but you only really worked with Aaron. The quarterbacks that weren't Aaron Rodgers, you struggled with in New York. And we don't have that big enough track record to give you a big contract even for one season. Where if he stays with the Jets and Justin Fields looks like a decent quarterback and Allen Lazard has a productive receiver, and I'm not saying have an incredible season, but be a productive number two, like 750 yards, 5 to 6 touchdowns, big plays, not devastating drops in key moments. That to me could sell a team like, okay, you're a solid number two. Maybe we can bring you in and we're going to draft a receiver behind you, but there's not as much pressure on that young receiver to come in right away to make an instant impact. So there are good options here. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe Lazard's trying to stay, because he knows if he goes to Pittsburgh, he's likely going to get buried on that depth chart, where now you look at it with the Jets. I mean, you look at the experience in that wide receiver room, there's not a lot. And you look at his size, he's probably going to be on the outside, especially in the 12 personnel. You know, Garrett Wilson's going to command a lot of attention. You know, Mason Taylor will be a guy that teams keep an eye on offensively. If you're Allen Lazard, you're probably going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups. You're probably going to be given opportunities to make plays. And if you make them, who knows? Maybe when you hit the market at 31, you can get a better contract. But again, the drops are a big, devastating part of his game and is incredibly frustrating. But again, would love to hear from you guys. Make sure to comment below. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. But again, Allen Lazard wants to remain a Jet. He says he's not effing leaving, but in my opinion, if I was a betting man, I feel that Allen Lazard will end the season in black and yellow. Thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode of Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest comments. And also, make sure to check out our community page where we give plenty of ideas for future videos where you can vote on what you want to see as a fan. And again, hit that like and subscribe, share our video, because we're trying to, with the YouTube algorithm, to get as many Jet fans to join our community. And also, if you're a hockey fan, check out my most recent video on my thoughts on the Utah Mammoths' new look, new design, and of course, new uniforms. I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and until next time, this has been Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us.